Leo Tolstoy will portray for us the theological life, pursuing perfect happiness. Let's introduce ourselves to Leo Tolstoy. First, we'll review his biography, and then we'll look at the book On Life, of which we're only reading one short chapter. And finally, we'll state the learning objective for Tolstoy. Tolstoy is a 19th century Russian novelist. He's also the head of a country estate in Russia, where he was born. And he is also the member of a imperial royalty. His mother was a princess. The estate where Tolstoy lived much of his life is now a museum. Tolstoy was born in 1828. That's about 10 years younger than Henry Thoreau. In 1851, Tolstoy was serving as a soldier, and he also began writing novels. His first novel is titled History of Yesterday. That reminds me of the title of Thoreau's lecture, which became Walden, History of Myself. There are significant kinships between Thoreau and Tolstoy, despite the remarkable difference in their privileges and family backgrounds. When Louisa May Alcott was on her way to Georgetown and Henry Thoreau had passed away, Tolstoy was married. He went on with his wife to have 6 children. After he was married, he also wrote his 2 major novels, War and Peace and Anna Karenina. Anna Karenina was finished in 1878, and at that time Tolstoy began to study philosophy and theology on his own, and he also began to practice something like living simply. He began to give up pleasures like coffee and alcohol and tea, and he also practiced vegetarianism. Again, very similar to our Henry Thoreau. In the 1890s, Tolstoy did encounter the works of Henry Thoreau. He first read Civil Disobedience, and he admired the argument that we should not obey an unjust government. And Tolstoy also read Walden after the 1890s. And for the rest of his life, Tolstoy discussed and put down ideas about Henry Thoreau in his journals and in some of his writings. The text that we're looking at is titled On Life. This was published in 1888. On Life began with an injury. Tolstoy was working in the fields of his country estate with the peasants, and he was severely injured and spent the next months in bed. In his journal, he began to write down some ideas about life. Let's look at some life statements by Tolstoy in chapter 24. Looking on page 134, Tolstoy writing, "Someone who stakes his life in the existence of his animal individuality cannot love, because love would appear to him as an activity directly opposed to his life. The life of such a man resides in the happiness of his animal existence." Let's look at another life statement on page 133. The third paragraph from the top, Tolstoy writing, "True love always has as its basis a renunciation of individual happiness and the resulting goodwill toward all. True love toward certain people, your kin or strangers, can grow only from this goodwill toward all, and only this love provides the true happiness of life. Tolstoy began writing in his journal and expressing insights and ideas about human life. He also began to collaborate and have discussions with professional philosophers in Russia. In 1887, the author gave a talk in Moscow titled The Concept of Life, in which he provided some of his ideas. That was our original reading for Philosophy 225. However, I felt that chapter 24 does a better idea of getting at the core ideas that we want to learn. In 1887, Tolstoy began to write the book On Life, and according to the translator of our edition, the author talked out his ideas with his family and with many visitors. Let's look at the table of contents and look at some of these interesting chapter titles. Chapter 1 is titled The Main Contradiction of Human Life. Chapter 9, The Birth of True Life in Man. Chapter 14, The true life of man does not take place in space and time. Chapter 15, Renouncing the happiness of the animal individuality is the law of human life. Chapter 24, that's the one we're reading. True love is a consequence of individual happiness rejected. Chapter 26, The effort of people directed at the impossible improvement of their existence deprives them of the possibility of their only true life. And finally, and this chapter looked very interesting to me, chapter 31, Life of the deceased does not cease in this world. All of the chapters are fairly short, about 3 to 5 pages, and the author is very consistent throughout. The author introduces a vocabulary we need to learn in order to talk his talk. For example, animal individuality is a common term, and for the author that refers to our ordinary sort of self-centered thinking that many humans have. And the author uses the term reasonable consciousness, which refers to like a mature person who thinks and reflects. It's good to note that when On Life was finally published in 1888, it was soon banned by the state and the church. The Orthodox Church of Russia reviewed the book and determined it ought to be prevented from publication. Sophia, the wife of Tolstoy, immediately began a French translation of the text or the book, and it was published in France at that time. In addition to learning our author's vocabulary, our learning objective is as follows: to examine Tolstoy's proposal about true love and happiness.